Well, diffusion is not always very smooth. There are barriers to the diffusion. It depends when and what is being diffused. Geographers have described the spread of new ideas as being similar to throwing a rock into a pond and watching the spread of ripples. You can see the ripples become gradually weaker as they move away from the point of impact. Any idea when it's been diffused, or any material part when it is being diffused, it gradually becomes weaker as one moves away from the point of impact. Acceptance generally decreases with distance and time, producing what geographers call time-distance decay. Modern mass media, however, along with relatively new technologies like the internet and cell phones, have greatly accelerated the process of diffusion, diminishing the impact of time-distance decay. Initially, we had this time-distance decay affecting cultures a lot. Industrial Revolution, which happened in the Western world, Asia missed out on that because of the time-distance decay factor, that the time taken for the innovation to move to Asia, or the distance covered for the innovation to move to Asia, was so much that it's like the spread of the ripples go towards the Asia, it became weaker. There are other barriers to diffusion like absorbing barrier and permeable barrier. Absorbing barrier is a complete halt to any sort of diffusion. Well, the best example could be the Taliban government back in Afghanistan actually had completely stopped any kind of connection with the outside world through any sort of media. Permeable barriers would let the diffusion pass through to some extent. Example could be when McDonald's was trying to do business with India. It took a long time for McDonald's to convince Indian government to have the business done with them, because McDonald's serve beef on their menu. India being a country where majority of people practice Hinduism, beef is a forbidden meat. So McDonald's had to take beef off in order to have the business done with India. So initially there was a barrier in terms of not letting McDonald's move in because it sells beef. But later, when McDonald's took beef off from their menu, it could permeate through. Another example from your book: when a school board objects to students with tattoos or body piercing, the principal of a high school may set limits by mandating that these markings will be covered by clothing. However, over the time, those mandates may change as people tend to get used to the ideas of body marking or piercing. Most likely than not, though some mandates will remain in place. In this way, the principal and the school board act as a permeable barrier to cultural innovation. So to begin with, there would be very strict orders for not letting it move in, but then slowly with time, the diffusion can permeate through. There are 3 stages of innovation acceptance. The first stage, acceptance, takes place at a steady but very slow rate because people are hesitant, benefits are not fully demonstrated, or maybe the stuff is not available there. The second stage, rapid growth in acceptance, occurs and the trait spreads widely, as with maybe a fashion style or a dance fad, etc. This actually goes through neighborhood effect, which means micro-scale diffusion in which acceptance of an innovation is most rapid in small clusters around an initial adopter. Internet has led to neighborhood effect in cyberspace too. The third stage, growth, shows a slower rate than in the second stage, because by that time, more or less a saturation has come in through. People have been migrating all over the world, while that also leads to the diffusion of material and non-material part. Lately, what we get to see that because of the connection which we have with regions, with areas, with cultures, a concept of transnationalism which has been coming up. Transnationalism is a phenomenon in which migrants or immigrants maintain social or economic ties to their place of origin. Often these relationships include visits home and the circular exchange of money or goods. So what happens that people living in a culture as an immigrant would also be holding on to the traits back from their home culture as they are connected to their home culture. This also leads to exchange of material and non-material culture between the place where the immigrants have moved in as well their home culture or home country, creating a pattern of transnationalism. A special case of diffusion is globalization. Globalization means increasingly linked world in which international borders are diminished in importance and a worldwide marketplace is being created. In modern age, in which improved worldwide transport and communications allow instantaneous diffusion of ideas and innovation, has accelerated the phenomena which is called globalization. Within no time you can be connected to the other part of the world, and as you are connected you would consciously or unconsciously will be diffusing things, material or non-material. This interconnected world has been created from a set of factors like faster and more reliable transportation system, particularly the jet planes. You can fly from one part of the world to the other part of the globe within maybe 14 hours. Second factor, almost instantaneous communication like computers, phones, faxes. So within no time you can reach people to the other part of the world. Well, as far as the modern globalization is concerned, it is a recent phenomena. But if you really look into globalization, it really goes back into ancient time too, when people used to travel between cultures in order to have things traded in like spices. Though modern globalization is a recent phenomena dating from late 20th century, but it's been there for a long time without the term globalization attached to it, as well without the factors which I just mentioned like very reliable and fast transportation or instantaneous communication. Some geographers refer to the moments like religious and political wars in Europe and the Middle East brought different people into direct contact with each other as early global encounters and suggest that they set the background for the contemporary globalization. Well, globalization has led to uneven development between the cultures. The tendency for industry to develop in a core periphery pattern, enriching the industrialized countries of the core and impoverishing the less industrialized periphery. The industrialized and developed countries are the core, which are constantly being fed by the less industrialized or developing cultures around the world. The term uneven development is also used to describe the urban pattern in which suburban areas are enriched while the inner city is impoverished. So it is leading to an uneven development where a particular area is being developing at the cost of other areas. So that particular area which has been developing and turns into developed is actually the core, and the one which is feeding the core is actually the periphery, where people are less richer and the areas are not doing as good in terms of development.